What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there is lots of news to go over this week, so we'll get right into it. The first is Ford has a bunch of new things they revealed this past week. The first, for us enthusiasts here, is a new teaser shot of the Shelby GT500 that's coming next year. And so we can see, a clear shot of the front end there, a little shadowy, but it's pretty clear that it looks like there's going to be more black plastic there in the middle part of the front bumper, but it's completely reworked that front end. Although it does seem to have the old 2015 to 2017 headlights, or a variation of those. It doesn't have the new boomerang style LEDs like you see in the 2018s, but you also do have some wider fenders there, obviously, and we've seen from the other teaser that was posted back in Detroit a couple months ago, this is going to be a very aggressive looking car, and so that's pretty cool to see. They also showed a new teaser for the Bronco, and all it is just that picture, and it's looks pretty similar in shape to a Wrangler, and also harkens back to the 2004 Bronco concept. But although it may look similar to a Wrangler, at least in its silhouette there, it's that's good news, because it means it's not just going to be a rebadged Everest, which is what a lot of people were worried about. The Everest is I think a Australian and like European Ford SUV, and people were worried that we were just going to put the Bronco name on that, since they basically brought the Australian Ranger over to the States here with very little changes. People were worried that's all they were going to do, but this clearly is an all-new model. But Ford, they don't want to make a Wrangler, apparently. They're kind of throwing a little shade, I guess you could say, at Jeep here, because the Ford's president, Jim Farley, confirmed that one will come in both two-door and four-door versions, so it really is sounding like a Wrangler competitor. But again, he continues on and says it's going to be comfortable at high speeds. It's going to be more at home in sand and on trails, but we'll be able to do high-speed stuff, which, if you watch my Wrangler review, you will know. With the wind noise and all that type of stuff, it's still, very much not a highway cruiser, or at least not as good as other normal SUVs. But he actually was quoted here as saying, for Jeep, that's rock crawling in Moab. For Ford, that's something different. Ford customers don't want something that looks like a doomsday vehicle. That was his quote. I like the way Jeep styles their stuff. I think it's really cool, but we'll have to see what direction they're taking this new Bronco. Other news about the Bronco is they also confirmed there's going to be a hybrid version of it coming as well as hybrid versions of the Mustang, F-150, Escape, and Explorer. None of that's really news. We already knew that the Mustang was going to get a hybrid version in 2020, and it was going to help with performance and give it V8-like performance, but not with a V8. We also know, with the F-150, it was going to be kind of like a mobile generator type deal, in addition to helping with efficiency, and I'm sure with the Escape and Explorer, it'll just help with efficiency. They also confirmed and showed off a new teaser image, though, of a new off-road SUV that's going to slot beneath the Bronco and be a smaller little off-roader to, again, compete with Jeep. As much as they say it's different, this really seems squarely aimed at Jeep, but that little thing looks really cool. I'm really excited to see more of that. Who knows when exactly that's coming? We know a lot of this stuff's going to be coming around 2020. Seems to be going to be a pretty big year for Ford here. But yeah, not sure exactly when, but that looks really cool if they stick to that styling. Other things here, though, they confirmed an Explorer ST is going to be coming, but they only showed it under a cover. But, you can imagine the current Explorer with the new Edge grille, we see on the Edge ST. Put that on an Explorer, and you basically, I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be looking like. Lastly, they talked about the new Mach 1 all-electric SUV. Now, they didn't call it the Mach 1 in this setting here today whenever they were talking about it, but we know from the teaser in Detroit that they showed of a Mustang and an Edge, I think, going into a warehouse and getting worked on and electrified. Then they had the Mach 1 naming there. So I'm assuming it's still going to be called the Mach 1, but it could be called something else anyway. It's an all-electric performance SUV. And according to, again, Mr. Farley here at Ford, he says it's going to be arriving in 2020 and that it's low, it's sleek, it's zero emissions. I'll make a prediction. mention, that vehicle is going to be famous without having to shoot it into space. So obviously doing a little dig at Tesla there. They also announced there's going to be a new standard safety tech they're rolling out on all models called Copilot 360. And it's going to include a backup camera, blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, lane keep assist, auto high beam, and automatic emergency braking. So the rollout's going to start for that with the 2019 Ford Edge. And, a lot of other car companies are doing this. Nissan has a thing they're rolled out for all their models. I think Toyota is doing something with Safety Sense, and there's all these different, systems. Honda Sensing, I think, is standard now. So all these companies are doing this. So I fully expected Ford to do this, but it's unfortunate it's being rolled out to all the models. That means the Mustang will also get it. And I won't go into my little rants about how much I hate autonomous braking, but it sounds like if you want a Mustang that doesn't have all the nannies to, alert you about a million different things and stop the car whenever it imagines there's some kind of safety risk, then you're going to want to buy a Mustang before the 2020 model year, because they're saying it's rolling out with the 2019 Edge this fall. 2019 Mustangs start rolling out this summer, so they make the cutoff. But after 2019 model Mustangs, 2020s and on, will get this tech. So just as a warning, those of you that might be holding out for one for whatever reason, pick one up here before next year. But anyway, so that's all the main updates there from Ford over from this past day. But earlier this week, they also revealed the new California Special package for the 2019 Mustang here. It's going to be coming back. Of course, it wasn't around for 2018, but now we have it here for the 2019 model year. And it's got a slightly different look, as you can see. It's got some new wheels, a new graphic design that now is midway across the door there instead of lower like it used to be. There's those stick-on side scoops, which a lot of people really hate. I think it actually goes with the body line of the car, though, and it's not awful. I mean, I personally wouldn't put them on my Mustang, but I don't, blame anyone that does. There's the new spoiler in the back there, California Special deck lid, which is a little unique and now has a California Special kind of scribbled out there on the back instead of being integrated into the faux gas cap like it used to be. Inside, there's the same type of micro suede seat inserts and red stitching like you get on other California Specials in the past. They also confirmed what I already reported last week whenever they revealed the 2019 Bullet for Europe. They also revealed it's going to have rev matched auto downshifts and the B&O Play 1000-watt audio system. That they confirmed this week is coming to all 2019 Mustangs as an option, of course. The rev matching is standard on GTs. It's not available on EcoBoosts, but the EcoBoost for 2019 apparently will be getting the active exhaust as an option. And the B&O Play system, of course, is for all Mustangs you can get as an option once again. So that's cool. Other little updates here on the Mustang. There's new colors they announced. One is called Need for Green, which they didn't officially show, but we've seen it spied already. And so it used to be called Spinel Green, or that was the code name for it. But I guess Need for Green is what they're calling that. There's also Velocity Blue that we haven't officially seen yet. I have a feeling it's going to be similar to Lightning Blue, but I'm not totally sure. But anyway, and then there's also, of course, Dark Highland Green, which is, of course, exclusive to the Bullet only. And order banks, by the way, personally, they were supposed to open on Monday, and I was going to place my order for the Bullet on Monday, but they never opened. So I'm hoping they open relatively soon. There's mixed reports saying it'll be, off into April. Others are saying it's sooner than that. So we'll have to wait and see, me personally, when I'll be able to place my order, but I will be ordering on day one, whatever day one comes. So yeah, and hopefully once they do open those order banks, we'll also get pricing for these 2019 Mustangs, as well as the actual final horsepower number for the Bullet, hopefully, as well. Other Ford news, last little bit of Ford news here, is the 2019 Ford Focus. I believe just the European version here was spied once again with this weird, comic wrap on it. Interesting marketing they're doing with this new Focus. Now, again, I'm pretty sure this is just the European one, because we have not seen a new Focus spy testing in the States at all yet. They've only been in Europe with European plates. And we also know there is still nowhere for them to build the U.S. version, because they said that they're not bringing Chinese-built vehicles to America here, and all the Focuses are going to be built in either China or I think a couple other places. But So it's all still very confusing as far as the 2019 Focus. So who knows when we'll actually get it here in the States. But anyway, interesting to see. That looks basically the same as all the other spy shots. You know, we mostly have a pretty good idea of what it looks like at this point. Now, another little sketchy report here. So this is coming from this Japanese magazine called Response, which apparently doesn't have a great track record, but what they're saying makes sense. So I'm inclined to at least pay a little attention to what they're saying here. So, it's another rumor about a Nissan Z coming back. And I know I talk about this like every other week in the weekly update, but it's been in the news a lot recently, and it's exciting to talk about, so I'm reporting on it here. But anyway, this Response magazine is claiming that Nissan was inspired by the Toyota-BMW partnership for the Supra and Z4, and that they are wanting to work with their existing partner Mercedes to make the next-gen Z that way. Already, Infiniti works with Mercedes, and the Infiniti QX30 is just a redone version of the Mercedes GLA. They also share, they get the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder motor is also from Mercedes. It's in other Infinitis. And so Nissan wants to kind of do the same thing, and they say, okay, well, according to this report, they would use some type of Mercedes platform for this sports car. I mean, Mercedes has several to pick from, and then they would use that same Mercedes 2-liter 4-cylinder for the base engine in this vehicle, but then the top model would actually still get the twin-turbo 3-liter V6 from the Red Sport 400 Q60, and that would be, I'm assuming, 400 horsepower in that model, and then there would also be some type of hybrid that could probably slot above that, but that's not really certain. So, I mean, I always assumed they would just take the Q60 and make a cheaper Nissan version, but I guess swapping platforms also could work. I still just think just making the same, something based on the Q60 platform that you already have, just give it a manual, give it to, the Nissan styling, cheaper interior, and you're done. It's really that simple. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it, but that's honestly all they would have to do, and I think Z fans would be happy even with something like that. Speaking of partnerships, though, the chief engineer of the 86 and the Supra, Mr. Tada, he was talking last week in Geneva about, people were still pestering him about when is a turbo BRZ 86 coming, and he gave a new excuse. In the past, it's been, a turbocharged version of that motor doesn't fit, the WRX engine doesn't fit in there, which have been all proven to be false, obviously. We do have turbo kits and supercharger kits for the 86 and BRZ that fit just fine. They drive great, by the way. I already reviewed a turbo BRZ and a turbo FRS, and so, or supercharged BRZ and turbo FRS. So I've driven all of them. They still handle very much like a BRZ, but according to Mr. Tada, he does not agree. And I really get the feeling that he's a perfectionist, but even still, this doesn't make any sense. So he's quoted here as saying his new excuse is, one characteristic of the 86 is that in terms of the front balance, it's slightly front loaded, so it makes the handling more fast and agile. So if we were to come up with a turbo version, we would have to go change the weight balance between the front and the rear. That means we have to come up with a completely new platform, so it's not about just changing or slight modification in the engine parts, which makes no sense. So, I mean, like anything in life, there's compromise sometimes. And I think if there's a huge demand clearly for a turbo version, so maybe the front turn-in won't be quite as sharp as it is in the regular BRZ. Maybe, it won't handle as amazingly good as a regular BRZ does. But I think people would actually accept a little less handling for more performance and more power. I mean, an example of this is the EcoBoost Mustang. The EcoBoost Mustang handles better than the GT Performance Pack versus Performance Pack because it's lighter, you have less weight over the front end, and therefore it handles better. But guess what? The GT is still the one that everyone loves because you still got good enough handling that it's still excellent, and you got all the straight line speed you could ever want. And so, it seems so much of an overreaction to be like, oh no, we would add a turbo and an intercooler and piping to the front end, and that would completely ruin the balance of the car, so much so that maybe instead of just putting a couple extra things in the back, maybe relocating the battery, a couple things like that, instead it's like, no, we have to do an entirely new different platform in order to do a turbo version. Like, I mean, I really appreciate, this guy is awesome. I thank him for creating the BRZ and the 86 and the Supra. I'm sure they're going to be amazing. But it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, just call it for what it is and say there's no way you can do it cheap enough that everyone that wants a turbo BRZ could afford it. If it's going to end up being 35 grand, no one buys it. I could see that being a decent reason, but saying stuff like this makes no sense to me. But anyway, I will move on. Some more fulfilling news here, satisfying, is Car and Driver actually did a little digging in the EPA listings for emissions here, and it showed about the new 2019 Genesis G90 that it's actually going to come with a manual transmission to the United States, and Hyundai confirmed that that is in fact the case. So it's only going to be available on the base engine rear-wheel drive version, but that's not that bad considering the base engine is still a 252 horsepower 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder. But if you do want all-wheel drive, or you want that 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6, the same one in the Genesis G80 Sport and also in the Kia Stinger, then you have to go get the automatic, which, by the way, the automatic isn't bad. It's the same automatic I believe you get in this Stinger GT, which I reviewed and loved. It's a really quick shifting automatic, and better than you would probably expect. So it's not an awful automatic, but it is nice that they are at least offering a manual here for that. And hopefully people actually buy Genesis G70s with manuals, because if they do, then maybe that'll convince Kia they need to bring a manual, at least for the base model Stingers as well. But anyway, interesting to see that. Car and Driver also did some talking with Audi's R&D boss, who sadly confirmed here that, according to him, the quote is, "There are no current plans for a direct replacement of the Audi R8." And there was rumors about this, that, the Lamborghini Huracan for the next version wouldn't have an Audi counterpart. But supposedly he says that just because they're not doing a next-gen version doesn't mean this version is going to get killed anytime soon. Apparently there's still a new V6 version coming, a turbo V6, the same one you see in all the other Audi, Porsche products. That's going to be supposedly put into the R8 here, and, it's going to have a long life cycle still. So even with the V10, whatever, it's going to continue to live on a little bit here longer. But after that, who knows, what's going to happen. I mean, he's always, they always say never, but as of right now, they're just going with all the electrified stuff, and that's kind of where they're going as far as performance. And so other news, though, is speaking of electrified stuff and new vehicles, they actually announced plans that Audi's going to reveal a new model every 3 weeks this year. So get used to hearing about Audis in the weekly updates, because every third weekly update, there will be a new Audi. I guess it's mostly going to be electric variants of already existing vehicles, and we know there's some other stuff coming already, like the E-Tron SUV. And one of those new vehicles Audi showed this week was the E-Tron GT, which is basically a sedan. Looks like it might be a hatchback, but who knows, a version of that E-Tron SUV. And of course would be sportier, maybe a little higher performing. Could actually use some tech from the Porsche Mission E as well, since again, Audi and Porsche seem to share everything these days. So it could even just be a reskinned version of the Mission E. We'll have to wait and see on all the details. But anyway, they just said that's coming in 2020. We have the one picture and no other info. So we'll have to wait until later on to get more info on that. They did say though that the SUV is going to be launched, the e-tron SUV, later this year. So anyway, interesting to see that. Another vehicle that looks like it may be getting electrified is the Jeep Renegade that was spied. And we know they're doing like a mild refresh that'll probably be shown relatively soon. But this one, the new developments that had that little electric, sign there in the window, which means it's going to be some type of electrification. It could be a mild hybrid system like in the new Wrangler and the new Ram, or it could be a full-on hybrid like we see in the Pacifica, something like that. But anyway, interesting to see that. Also, a 3-row Jeep was spied yet again, which I think they're calling the Grand Commander in China, where it's being developed for primarily, but it's also probably coming to the States here, and I still think it's going to be called the Grand Wagoneer. That's just my personal hunch, but I think they did actually trademark that name not too long ago, and or at least Wagoneer. So we'll have to wait and see, what they do with that. But anyway, what we can see here, it's obviously a large 3-row version of typical Jeep styling like you would expect. On the inside there, it does reveal that the tachometer, you can see pretty clearly, has a red line of around 5,500 RPMs, which lines up with the new Jeep 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that's available in the Wrangler and whatnot. And so that's likely to be powering this, which lines up right with all the other three-row crossovers and their horsepower outputs. So it totally makes sense there, but who knows when we'll actually see that. Also, a few companies showed teasers here for vehicles that are going to be debuting at the New York Auto Show, which is coming up here in less than 2 weeks. And actually, thanks to Honda, I will be going to the New York Auto Show for the first time ever here this year. And so it'll be pretty cool. I'll be covering all the debuts there and covering it just like I did with Detroit. And so 2 weeks from now, whenever that is going on, I think it's March 28th and 29th, I will not do a weekly update that week. Instead, I will just have all the videos, of each individual car and all the details on each vehicle in those individual videos. So that's what I'll be doing in 2 weeks for that, and how I'll be covering the New York Auto Show. And that way we won't have a 45-minute weekly update either. It'll just be all the different videos there, and I'll have a playlist as well. So if you want to watch like a weekly update, you'll be able to just click the playlist and watch through all the different debuts there as I cover them. But anyway, so the first company here that has a teaser is Acura is showing. They're going to be showing the production version of the RDX, and we saw a pretty much production version of it already at Detroit, but that one had side mirrors that weren't production ready and bigger wheels. They're also going to be showing off a new A-Spec trim for it here in New York, and that's going to be a little bit sportier. How much so, we'll have to wait and see, but does look pretty in line with what we've seen already from the one picture they showed. Subaru has teased the 2019 Forester that they'll be debuting in New York, and we just get a picture of the LED taillight there, and I have to say it actually looks a little closer to a Subaru concept vehicle than the ones in the past, where it's just ended up turning out to be some old-fashioned bulb. This actually is like a nice LED treatment that's a little more unique, so we'll have to wait and see. It's most likely going to have a lot of similar styling to the Ascent, just be smaller and more evolutionary in styling. But anyway, interesting to see that. Toyota showed us a teaser image here for the 2019 RAV4, and all we see is the silhouette, so you can see the basic shape of it like any other SUV of this type. Nothing too unique there, so we'll have to wait till New York to see more on that. McLaren showed a teaser, although I don't think it's going to be revealed in the New York Auto Show, but a teaser shot, a new one for the whatever their hybrid hypercar Grand Tourer, that's the three-seater, the successor of the McLaren F1. The new teaser image shows a 243 mile per hour speed there on the gauge cluster, and they actually revealed that this vehicle is going to exceed 243 miles an hour and top the McLaren F1 as the new highest, I guess, top speed for a McLaren. So they also said it's going to have a real name instead of letters and numbers, and they started doing that with the Senna, and it will continue on with this model as well. So it'll be interesting to see what name they pick for it. Speaking of hybrid hypercars and stuff, though, Aston Martin, they were talking with at Geneva here. They were talking with the CEO, and basically we already knew there was a mid-engined Aston Martin coming that was supposed to fight the 488 and the McLaren 720S, and that's going to be a regular production model, I believe, nothing super limited. But there's this new one that has just been revealed just in an interview here that's going to be supposedly called it's not officially called this, but they're referring to it as the brother of the Valkyrie. So the Valkyrie, of course, is the crazy 1,000 horsepower, is road legal. There's just the Valkyrie AMR Pro that was shown last week. That's the non-road legal version. But the regular Valkyrie will be road legal, but very, very limited, very expensive. And so this is going to be called the brother of the Valkyrie, whatever this one is. It's going to be limited edition still, but I think it's going to be less extreme and more affordable. But it should be coming along with the regular mid-engine one around 2021. But Aston Martin's boss was talking with motoring.au, who was elaborating a little bit more on it, not too much, but he did say, in our portfolio today, we don't have an engine capable of giving us the output we require. Whether through collaboration with AMG or whether by ourselves, we have to find an answer. But he did say it would have some type of hybrid assistance, like every other vehicle seems to be going in that direction. Other Aston Martin news, though, is that Road and Track is actually reporting here that Aston is considering putting an inline six engine in the Vantage, and they really like the motor, obviously, since they have this partnership with AMG, the motor in the new CLS 53, which is an inline six 3-liter engine. And I think the main reason why they are interested in that is for China, where the taxes in all those Asian countries, the taxes get really, really high over 3 liters of displacement. And so if you do a 3-liter motor, it'll be a lot more affordable for those people, and also be a new entry-level model possibly for the rest of the world. And, you know, it sounds like a little weak to say, oh, it's going to be an inline six powered Aston Martin, but they did do a six-cylinder back in the 90s, I think, with the DB7. And even if they don't increase the power on this CLS 53 engine, in the CLS 53, it does 430 horsepower and 383 pound-feet of torque. Plus, it has a hybrid assistance system for an extra 21 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque. But, I mean, 430 horsepower, I think that's what the last gen Vantage was doing. So, I mean, it's not like it's going to be, you know, too slow for an Aston or anything like that. So I could see this working. You know, I just be to see about the sound and whatnot. But anyway, interesting to see that, and we'll have to see if they actually do end up, you know, developing that and, you know, where that goes. And in some other hybrid news from a sports car company, Auto Express spoke with Ferrari's CEO, who said that a hybrid V8 is coming from Ferrari next year. They didn't say sports car, they didn't say what, but since all the current products are pretty new, it's most likely going to be for the Ferrari SUV that's been rumored to be coming next year. And that would line up if he says next year for this hybrid and next year for the SUV. It's probably the hybrid SUV, and I'm sure that's the easiest way to incorporate a hybrid without upsetting too many Ferrari lovers is by putting it into an SUV, which is already kind of a compromise already. So why not just make everyone angry all the way and just make it a hybrid as well while we make an SUV? And so he did also go on to say that it'll be more of a traditional hybrid than the LaFerrari to fulfill a different role. So it'll obviously boost performance, but it doesn't even sound like it's something in the LaFerrari where it was like a boost of electric power. It's probably just going to be like a regular hybrid. So we'll have to see how this goes for Ferrari. Obviously, the Lamborghini Urus is apparently selling like hotcakes. Big surprise there. You know, the Bentley Bentayga and all those are very popular. So, you know, it's just the way things are going these days with everyone being obsessed with SUVs. But anyway, interesting to see that. And since car companies are all over the place with products these days, Porsche, apparently at the Geneva Motor Show, they Roadshow interviewed Porsche's global sales chief, who said that Porsche engineers are working on a flying sports car concept. And that it's at a very early stage as far as, you know, them working on this. But a flying car from Porsche. I don't know. The future is so bizarre. And so anyway, he went on to say that it would be able to fly on its own completely from A to B, but also enabling the passenger or pilot to take control for a certain amount of time if it stays within its performance envelope. So then that brings up the thing, you know, with all this other flying car stuff like the Audi I talked about last week, you know, it's autonomous, so you don't have to have a pilot's license that just does its own thing and, you know, it's whatever. But with this, if you can actually take control of the flying, then it's like Porsche's getting into an aircraft, you know, company, and so then you would have to have a pilot's license, I would assume, to fly this, in addition to a driver's license. So it'd be kind of interesting. I mean, that would actually make it a little bit cooler, at least if you could control it, but that just has so many other snafus involved, you know, with regulations and stuff. But apparently that is something they're considering, so nothing is off the table anymore. Some other crazy Porsche news is, and this is actually coming sooner and more realistic, is Autocar interviewed Oliver Bloom, their CEO here, who said that a hybrid 911 is coming in a couple years, and that it will be the most powerful 911 we've ever had. 700 brake horsepower might be possible. So, I think he's referencing regular 911s because I believe the GT2 RS is already over that mark or close to it. So, you know, it's looking like it'll probably just be the Porsche 911 Turbo S E-Hybrid, because that's what they've been doing with all the Turbo S models. You know, the Panamera Turbo S has the E-Hybrid version. That gets an extra 136 horsepower from an electric motor. You take that electric motor, toss it into, you know, a Turbo S 911, which already does over 600 horsepower. You put 136 horsepower electric motor in it, or even something smaller, since it's a smaller wheelbase. Maybe you don't have as much room for you know, batteries or whatever. But it would still, you know, easily push it over 700 horsepower. And would make sense if he's saying that it would be like the new, probably top of the line one, obviously with 700 horsepower, then an E-Hybrid branding would work with that. He also said it'll have a special button for the electric punch, which I like the way he said that. So that would be fun, you know, a little like NOS type button there with the electric punch there. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, we'll have to wait and see how that all pans out. But he said that it'll be coming in a couple years. So a couple years after the new one, and the new 911 911 we know is coming here at the end of this year most likely. So, figure probably 2020, 2021 is, when something like this could show up. Also, we have some more mundane news here this week. Some images leaked on pc.auto.cn of a future digital gauge cluster for the 2019 Mazda 3, or supposedly the 2019 version. We'll have to see if it comes that soon or not. But anyway, it looks really cool, similar to a Lexus in its sports setting there, but then there's a more traditional layout as well. Not sure when we're going to see a new Mazda 3 or this, gauge cluster, but it does look pretty cool. And Mazda did actually release pricing this week, though, for the 2018 Mazda 6. Mazda's a little behind. While everyone else is revealing 2019s, Mazda's like, here's 2018s, which, depending on how you feel about that, is either good or bad. But they're at least keeping with the calendar year. I'll give them that. So it's going to be on sale in April, and it starts at $22,840, and you can still get a manual, but only in that base trim. The enthusiast news that's really interesting, though, is there's now the new 2.5-liter turbo motor from the CX-9 that's available here in the Mazda 6, and it's got the 250 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. But that's unfortunately only going to be available in the Grand Touring Reserve, and Signature trims. So that Grand Touring one starts at $30,090. So $30,000 is the entry point if you want that more powerful engine. Still isn't, horrendously expensive or anything. That also gets you the Bose stereo, satellite radio, navigation, paddle shifters, and a couple other things. Then there, like I said, that Grand Touring Reserve trim, you get the heads-up display, the heated steering wheel, a couple other things, and there's a $35,590 Signature trim is the top of the line one now, and that gets Japanese Sen wood interior accents, some other really nice leathers and things like that. There's a 360 degree view camera system and a 7-inch gauge display as well there in the middle. So that's going to be a pretty impressive vehicle, even at $35,000 fully loaded. I think it's a lot of car, considering all these new Mazdas are really impressive. And you'll see, I just filmed a review of a CX-5 that'll be coming next month, and a Miata will be coming sooner than that. And they're just really impressive interiors these days. Another very impressive interior, Volvo's interiors are all really cool, and one shot leaked out of Volvo's new midsize sedan, the S60, thanks to a Swedish website that I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, but we just have one image of it here, and it's basically just like a shorter wheelbase version of the S90. It's like identical, which I love Volvo's current styling, but it's getting to be like Mercedes, and even worse than Mercedes, where they're identical. It's just like small, medium, large, like make something a little more unique looking and differentiate the models a little bit. I think it's just I don't know, but anyway, so looks good though, of course, since it looks like the S90, and I'm sure we'll see more of that sometime here this summer or something. BMW was spied testing the 7 Series refresh here, and it's just a refresh, so it's just changes to the front end and the back end, mostly. You get some new headlights. Looks like it's going to have the larger grille similar to the X7. They're really making those kidney grills huge here. It's also got a couple interior shots here that shows it's going to be mostly the same inside, except there's these new digital gauges that got rid of the whole little trim bezels they had, so they kind of looked like analog gauges, and now it's just like one big open screen, which is what everyone else is doing these days, so not a big deal there. And that could debut at the Paris Auto Show in October, since it's just a refresh, but it could be sometime later on as well. And then the last news this week is Mercedes this past week has debuted this new digital light technology that'll be available in the Maybach first. And so it's basically a small LED that they said has over 1 million micro reflectors in each headlight, and it projects images onto the ground that are helpful to the driver. Some of them make sense, like it's showing guidelines whenever you're going through a narrow space, and that would be really helpful to make sure you can actually fit or whatever. There's others though that are simply a heads-up display would be good enough. So they have like one that alerts you to cold temperatures, which is kind of pointless to me anyway, I think, but having that projected on the ground is no better than having a little warning light in the gauge cluster and a heads-up display, so that seems a little silly. They also have guide arrows for navigation, again projecting this stuff physically on the ground outside. Like, I don't know, it seems like a little weird to be like telling everyone like, hey, I'm turning left up here, everyone. Like, I don't know. But anyway, and then there's even an alert whenever you're leaving your lane, which again should be something, it should be notified within the car, not like, hey, look, there's a thing telling me I'm going off the road. Like if you were looking up out at the road, you would already see that you're going off the road. And Mercedes, my box especially, should have the tech that you wouldn't be drifting from your lane anyway. But I digress. But one of them that's even a little awkward, I would imagine, would be there's one that will point to a pedestrian that's walking in case you don't see them, which would be really awkward. You're driving through a city area and it's like, hey, look, there's a pedestrian, and the pedestrian's like walking there. It's like, why is this thing pointing at me? Like, it would just be kind of funny. But anyway, don't have to worry about it if you live in America, because this is for Europe only, because our laws here in the States don't allow laser headlights or any of this fancy lighting technology, so it's only for Europe, and again, only in the My Box for now. But anyway, interesting to see that. But yes, that's it for all the news this week, guys. Let me know your thoughts about everything in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take care.